Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry for the delay. I'm just trying to make sure. I have never done this before, so you have to. I have to apologize if I'm a little bit late, but then also I have to apologize if I'm doing this incorrectly. So, first couple things. If you can hear me, three people. If you can hear me, just press one or something. You can hear me. If you can't hear me, can you hear me? Let me just check in there. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shout out to my sister Segi, Joseph, Evans, Larry, and Miguel. Miguel. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Let me just give it another 2 or 3 minutes. Just make sure few more people come in. Just a few more. Um, okay. Good. A few more people are coming in. Thank you very much. Thank you. Shout out to everybody for tuning in. I know this is unlike me, so I apologize if I've delayed you. But anyway, let me just get started. So first things first, I want to thank everybody who's been watching the documentaries. So from the very first documentary we uploaded a year ago, which was called what was it called? The Dahomey Kingdom, excuse me. I want to thank everybody for watching it because it was probably we when we shot it in the first place, we didn't really think that it was just meant to be a travel documentary, and in the end it turned out to be something much more than we anticipated. So I'm very, very grateful for everybody watching that one, and then obviously the voodoo in Togo one, which came just after, was immense. I didn't expect that one to do as much as it did, and thankful to many people who've been shout out to Backhand 67 from Florida. Shout out to all those people who've been posting on their Facebook channels, Facebook pages rather. Thank you to all those people. Twitter people hit me up. We probably have, I've had over 2,000 comments for each one, which is just incredible. I again anticipate it, but I'm very, very grateful. And then the two subsequent documentaries that we made in Mali, which again, this documentary we shot exactly 2 years ago, in 2018, April time, 2018. We're in May actually, but whatever. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you that those two documentaries, the first documentary about the Jene and the Dogon people. Very great experience. I'm going to be talking about them a little bit, as well as the second documentary, which is the Rise of Islam in Mali. What I want to do, thank you, SAS Tactical and Fitness. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Please, by the way, we don't need you to stop there. Please keep sharing it. Please keep posting it. Okay, so let me get started. I think we have enough people. Please hit the like button, people. As you come in, I'd really appreciate it. Just hit like ASAP so that we can ensure that we get the likes up as soon as possible. Thank you very much. So let me start by just talking a little bit about myself. My name is Onuora Abuah. I was born in Kenya, Nairobi to be precise. I won't say exactly when, but it was somewhere in the mid 80s. My mother is from Rwanda. She's a Tutsi from Rwanda who was raised in Uganda during the first crisis that they had over there. So she's been living. She grew up in Uganda, went to study in Kenya as well. My father is an Igbo man from Nigeria, so southeastern Nigeria. They met. I think they met in Uganda or something like that. Thank you, Kwame Olatunji. Thank you very much. Love the information you're sharing. I appreciate that. Thank you. So my parents met in Uganda, and then we lived in various different countries: Burundi, Congo, Brazzaville, which shares Brazzaville basically is the capital city of Congo, and then you have Kinshasa, which is the capital of DRC. But it's basically one city, kind of, basically one place. Anyway, those two places Burundi, Congo, and then I moved to Benin, Republic of Benin, where the Dahomey Kingdom is currently, where we shot the Dahomey Kingdom. So I moved to Benin, city of Cotonou. I started school there. From there, I moved to Nigeria. From there, I moved briefly to Switzerland, and then I moved to Togo. So if you look at the West African coastline, you have Nigeria, you have Benin, you have Togo. So I've already covered those 3 countries for my education. And then when I was a little bit, and then after that, I moved to the UK, which is where I've lived for the majority of the time. Chuku Emeka Media, thank you very much. Good to see you, my brother. Thank you. Yeah, we'll have time for questions. I want to try and keep this very brief. I'll tell you a little bit about, my background, the traveling, and then we'll ask questions at the end. So please save your questions, or yeah, that'll be the easiest thing. Just save your questions to the end. Thank you very much. So anyway, so moved to UK, which is where I've lived for the majority of the last nearly 20 years now. So anyway, long story short, my interest in Africa came from really just when we were children, because my father lived in Nigeria, my mother lived in Cotonou, which is the capital. No, it's not the capital. It's the key city in the Republic of Benin. So we would drive 3 hours across the border from Cotonou to Lagos. So we drive on a Friday, and then on a Sunday drive back to Cotonou. So we were always very familiar with the border. The border that's between the 2 countries on the coast is called Seme border, which is currently closed, by the way, simply because of poor leadership, poor organization. It's closed for the time being, even prior to the coronavirus outbreak. So anyway, we used to cross that border regularly. So, and then as time went by, we used to drive into Lomé, go and see what Lomé is like. Lomé was where I went to secondary school, if you remember from my explanation. So Lomé is where I went to secondary school. So we would drive between the 3 countries. Now, just to be clear, this is I think in the 1960s and 70s, or early 70s, I think, they constructed a West African highway, a highway which begins, I think, in somewhere. I won't say exactly where, I'm not entirely sure, but it begins in Lagos and it goes all the way to Dakar. Dakar is the most westerly city in Africa. So Dakar is basically facing the bit that faces the Canary Islands. So it's on the other side of West Africa. They constructed a West African highway, which is one of the most beautiful things you will ever see. So basically you're driving, particularly when you cross the border from, when you get to an area called Badagry, which is an old place where they used to enslave African people and then ship them to the New World. From Badagry all the way up until you get to Aflao, which is the border between Togo and Ghana. You have, to your left-hand side, you have Atlantic Ocean, some of the most beautiful beaches you will ever see. And not beaches that are, touristy beaches, but just natural beaches. So on the left-hand side, you have that, and then on the right-hand side, you have life. So you travel across this coastline, and you start to see, and you're on the West African Highway. So specifically, what I wanted to talk about regarding traveling is, at this point, I've been to over half of West African countries. So West Africa is considered the countries that make up ECOWAS. So you have Nigeria, you have Benin, you have Togo, you have Ghana, you have Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, you have Gambia, Senegal, Liberia. Up north, you have Burkina Faso, you have Mali, you have Niger, you have Chad. And I think Mauritania is technically part of that. And the country that's called Western Sahara as well is part of that. I may be missing one or two. So I've been to the majority of those places. I've not driven through all of them, but I could tell you a little bit about each one. But my recommendation to all of you is, particularly when this coronavirus outbreak is over, especially those people, because I get comments, if you read the comments for the videos, a lot of people go back, particularly if you've traced your DNA to the Fon or the Airway people or the or any of the people on that West African coastline. It's very important that you go back, and it's more important that you try and travel across West Africa. Now, if you're a West African like myself, you have what we call an ECOWAS passport, which basically allows you to travel across the. Somebody corrected me with chat. Thank you very much. Which basically allows you to travel across the coastline. I mean, so I travel across the entire what is called the ECOWAS region without using a visa. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't pay a fee. Technically, there's not supposed to be a fee, but you are allowed to travel across without requiring a visa. The borders themselves, I think, with the exception of the border between Nigeria and Benin Republic on the coast, it's what they call semi-border. The majority of the borders are fairly straightforward. I've heard other people talk about the one between Gambia and Senegal, the ones between Gambia and Senegal, not being that great. I haven't really traveled through them, so I can't really say. But it's very important, particularly that if you are traveling across the borders, that you're making sure that if you're not a West Africa, somebody with an ECOWAS passport, that you have the valid yellow fever vaccines, which you need. Probably now they're probably going to add some type of COVID-19 vaccine that you need to take if you're going to be able to cross the border. But despite all these things, despite all the bureaucracy and everything like that, this isn't a complicated thing. Okay, it's not something you should be fearful. West Africa has had a lot of stories about. Africa in general has a lot of stories about what's wrong or what's good or what's bad. But the truth of the matter is, when you cross these borders, as long as you have the right documentation, as long as you're fairly straightforward with everything you're doing, these people allow you through. Again, I have to take exception with our beloved Nigeria and the semi-border. That's the only one I've really, and I'm a Nigerian, I've really ever found any kind of issue. But if you're a US citizen, if you're a British citizen, if you're from anywhere else outside, they'll be just as welcoming to you as they would be for anybody else. So yeah. Souls of our ancestors, I fear America, the West more than Africa. Well, I don't blame you, it's not my sister. I don't blame you. Yeah. So okay, you know what we'll do? Let's take a couple of questions because I think we're 12 minutes in. I don't want to take too much of your time. I know this is quarantine lockdown time. So if you have questions, put them through. Please hit the like button. Please share them. This is the first one I'm doing, so I don't know. Again, I think everybody can hear me. All right. Everybody can hear me. So put the questions through. Is it safe for a woman to travel alone? Okay, so I think the most important question that I can ask you is where are you traveling to? Because I can only vouch for certain places. I know that traveling between Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana is probably one of the most straightforward journeys you can do. In fact, if you travel from Nigeria, they have I think they have like tour companies, these buses that I think you pick them up in Apapa or somewhere like that, or in Badagry, some area of Lagos. Don't quote me. And then the coach will basically travel across the border. A lot of the people there are foreigners, people from outside, and then they will cross the border for you. Usually when you get to the border, they'll take all your passports and stuff like that. They go and take them to the immigration people. But then when you get to a certain part, what they call no man's land, you get out and you walk, and it's literally about maybe 200 feet or something like that. Not even that. Maybe not even 200 feet. You go through, you show your passport a few times. Some people might try and collect money from you, and this I notice in Togo and Benin. But as a woman, it's again, they're not going to, if you make yourself too obvious, in the terms of, you start, talking loudly, making it seem like you're blatantly a foreigner, then, like anywhere else in the world, people will start, people might, but as far as I'm concerned, crossing the borders is very, very straightforward. The people are very friendly, and if you ask questions, if you're not sure about something, they'll guide you. And usually you always find some nice person, maybe one auntie or somebody like that, that will be like, oh yes, you know what, just go there, they'll help you. You know, when is the best time of the year to book tickets? Well, you have to understand that these countries have large diasporas. So so Benin, Togo, these countries were colonized by France. So a lot of their diaspora lives in France, maybe Belgium. So just like in the summertime, we would go to wherever, they would book to go back home in some cases. So flights are very expensive. The best times for me that I always recommend you go if you can, is February, March, and then later in the year between September, October, and November, simply because it's quieter. Now, in Benin, for example, they have the Voodoo Festival. I think that's in January, February. Again, I don't know what's going to happen after this COVID-19. So, it depends. In Mali, they used to have the Dogon Festival, which I think was also January, which was a big festival. I think Bono has been out there a few times to do shows. You have Fatimata Fatimata, what's the singer from Mali? You have these big international singers that will come and do shows in Mali. You also have the Oshun Festival in August, I think. It's probably cancelled this year, who knows? Those are good festivals for you to go and check out. But then August is, a relatively expensive time to go to Nigeria. Again, Nigeria probably has the largest diaspora of all these countries. So their diaspora comes back. Nigeria is a party place. So those would be, I would say February. I would say January, February, March, and then October, November. Okay. Hello. Which country should I? Okay. A few questions. What is the best time of day? What language are you proficient in? Well, I speak English and French, a little bit of Igbo. I call it market Yoruba, so and market Hausa. So those are two languages from Yoruba, spoken between Nigeria and Benin. Hausa is spoken far in the north of Nigeria. So the new documentary, which I have coming, by the way, is a documentary on Kano, so the ancient emirates of Kano. So it's a Hausa. It was part of the 6 or 7 Hausa cities that were very, very popular during the medieval period, very, very wealthy. They're Hausa speaking. And then Yoruba obviously is from West Africa, from the western part of Nigeria, eastern part of Benin Republic. And even in Togo, they speak Yoruba. So those are the languages that I can kind of get by. Which country should I go to? First, being of African diaspora, Haitian ancestry. If you're Haitian, you have to go to Benin Republic. Benin Republic, Republique du Benin, Sakbase, by the way, my Haitian people. Benin Republic, from what I understand, I have to do further research into this, but from what I understand, Toussaint Louverture, who is the great Haitian liberator, was born in Haiti. Instead, from what we uncovered from doing our documentary, was that even his aunt, actually, many of the women, with the so-called Amazons of that part, when they were captured, you have to understand, Benin was considered part of the slave coast. And so when the Dahomey Kingdom was fighting with the Yoruba people, if the Dahomey Kingdom lost, they would send Yorubas. If the Yoruba Kingdom won, they would send people from Dahomey. And very often they would send the female fighting force. So a lot of the women that went and fought in the Haitian Revolution have some descent from Dahomey, but which is now called the Benin Republic. So you have, as well as other places as well, by the way. So you have a lot of descent there, but I think with Haiti being what it was, gaining the independence that it gained when it did, I think the key thing is to remember that, after the Haitian Revolution, many places decided that, we're not going to keep African people together from the same place because of the communication. So I think Haiti would probably be the closest place for a Haitian person to go to and say, okay, I have more, and you have to do your own DNA. But what you probably find you have more in common with the Fon, with the Ewe, the Aja people, the Yoruba people. So I definitely say go to Benin. And the beautiful thing about going to Benin is it's a 1.5 hour drive to Togo. and maybe another half an hour, 45-minute drive into Nigeria. So if you are able to organize your visas and stuff, that would be a great place to go. Based on your travel experiences, so Chuku Emeka Media, based on your travel experiences, how do you think religion have affected the growth of the African continent? I think it's pretty obvious from my documentaries that I think religion has adversely affected our continent in the sense that we have almost forgotten everything that we did prior. And you have to understand, we're only, I'm in my mid-30s. My father is in his mid-80s. So my father was part of that first generation of people that were really born converts or were about to be converts. One of my favorite, so his generation, the generation before him, would have either converted or not converted. They would have still been indigenous. And without question, that was the last generation that was truly African in spirit, in body, and in mind. They thought like Africans, they behaved like Africans, and so on. So I think that was, that regarding Christianity came and wiped away everything that we held sacred to ourselves. And the ongoing problem in Africa now is deciding whether or not Christianity is really the so-called Christianity practiced in the New Testament version of the Bible, because the Old Testament version is completely out of whack. But the Christianity that we practice is more of a commerce Christianity. It's a business Christianity where, it's really just about the pastors and the pastor's charisma, just like it is in the States, just like it is everywhere else, believing that these people are divine, they could touch you. And, so there's this belief that, me being saved. And by the way, if you want to believe whatever you want to believe, that's up to you. I'm just talking from a point of view of fact and history. These people very oftentimes will tell you that, if you go and do this, go and do that, by tomorrow you'll have all of this. And this is no different to these fake babalawos, what they call juju men or voodoo men, whatever you want to call them, like similar to the one that I spoke to when I went to Togo. They will tell you, bring this, bring that, and then by tomorrow you'll have this, and that's very similar to what a lot of Christian pastors offer. So I would say it negatively affected it. But in doing my research for this new documentary that I'm going on Kano, you see, Islam came much earlier than Christianity in terms of to a mass population, but it came quite late. But the thing with Islam is when Islam came to the regions known as Mali, northern Senegal, northern Nigeria, those areas, it was merged with an African, so it was never fully accepted. The Arabic script came in, people started using the Arabic script to do their business, because these were business cities, capitalist cities, but they had a very fair way of understanding the people and what to impose on them. It wasn't really until the medieval empire of Mali that Islam was really being forced across the area. But even in Zaria, for example, if you know anything about Zaria, you have the female royal line, Amina and co, who were like not accepting Islam until really the 1800s. So Islam in one way brought a certain type of uniformity among the people, but it destroyed it just as badly as Christianity did. And that is something which, nobody, no historian can really argue about. Okay, there are quite a few questions, so let me get to them quickly. Please keep liking. Please keep liking. Based on your experience, how do you think religion? What have I missed? What made you start making the films? Good question, Kwame. Okay, so for me, again, traveling across these countries for me was a big deal, because I found myself in a position where I was seeing Africa from a point of view. Again, if you're born and bred in Africa, you kind of hear what's going on, what's being said about Africa from outside, kind of. But really, you have your own set of your own principles of understanding what being an African is, what Africa is as a place, etc. And so for me, sorry, this light at the back is really annoying. So for me, when I first started traveling to Africa, I saw beauty, plain and simple. I found it was very different to the American movies that I'll be watching on TV, the TV shows, and so on. I found it was very different, but I started understanding it. But I think the thing that blew my mind was when I was in school in Togo, and my history teacher said to me, this is when I was like 13, he said to me, did you know that World War II started in Togo? And I was like, the first gunshots of World War II were in Togo. And that already just blew my mind, because I was like, from what I know, little I know about World War I, excuse me, the Great War in 1914. From what I knew about it was Germany, France, Britain, right? So when I heard that, I was always very curious. And then I knew that there was always an issue with understanding history of Africa. I knew that there was I think we can all tell from a young age that the perspective of all of us, as intelligent as we are as children, as perceptive as we are to the different things that are going on around us, our intuition, the way we're able to think and, construct ideas in our heads, whether it be dancing or even on an academic level. We know that there's more to us than this story, that we were slaves, we are third world, blah, blah, blah. So for me, it was much more about finding out about it for myself. And I brought the camera with me because, a lot of the documentaries that are made about Africa's history, particularly when we talk about travel documentaries. You look at the documentaries made by Henry Louis Gates in the 90s, when you look at the documentaries made by a lot of these travelers, it's very much from a point of view of a foreigner. And I really wanted to do I really wanted to show it from an African person's point of view. So that's also taking the history, but also taking the perspective of an African, how you would see the impact of all these things happening. So that's that. Okay, next question. I like to travel when it's dark in the UK. What were your next documentary about? My next documentary is about Kano Empire. So I'm hoping, that's pretty much completed. I'm just trying to finish some things. I'm hoping to release that before the end of the month. And then I've also I came back a day before the lockdown happened in the UK. I was shooting another documentary, which took me to Ondo in southwestern Nigeria. But that's more of a profile of a particular person, but it will go into the culture as well of the Yoruba to an extent. Who's listening to Bono in West Africa? They don't listen to him, but like many of these Western artists, he goes there to do a lot of charity work in Mali. Your thoughts on the new eco currency? The new eco currency, I think, is a step in the right direction. We all know that this franc CFA, the French franc, bankrolled by France, really is the crippling factor of many of these countries in West Africa. And you have to understand, West Africa is largely controlled by France. I mean, down to the television, everywhere you go, if you're in Togo, Benin, Senegal, Burkina Faso, any of these countries which were so-called colonized by France, everywhere, pretty much every corner, you'll see a poster for Canal Plus, which is basically cable. So in the UK, that's like Sky. If you're in America, that's like, I guess, I don't know what your cable, the big cable companies. So they control effectively the TV to the point of view that me as a filmmaker, if I want to go and make a film in those places, the only avenues for funding would be Canal Plus. There's another company called TV5, TV5, and another one called and another organization called the Francophonie, so which is basically the Frenchman in Africa. So they have such a control over media in these countries as well as the economy. So these are things which we have to eradicate. The echo is a step in the right direction. I don't think it solves the problem, but let's just see it come into effect first. What was the name of the song in the Dahomey doc of the talking drum when you went to the King of Porto Novo? I can't remember that. But they were speaking Fongbe. So you have the Gbe languages, so Fon, Yoruba, those kind of languages. and that was Fongbe is a dialect of the language that they were speaking. How do you develop your African-centered consciousness? Is Dr. Obadele Kambon producer on your docs? No, Dr. Obadele Kambon is a friend, a very good friend. He's not a friend, but he's an advisor. A lot of the time, I will send stuff to him just for him to do the once over. I've actually been planning a documentary we're going to do on Kemet. The plan was to go shoot it last April, but again, it's very difficult to raise funding. So we're hoping we'll be able to shoot it when this quarantine's over, which is basically a whole piece on the Nile Valley, from inception to its impact around the world. But he's basically like an advisor, kind of. He helps me out, gives me some extra information, verifies stuff for me. Will you ever do a piece on the Gulagichi people of South Carolina? My plan is to go and do documentaries all across the Black world, but again, I have to start with where I have access to. I'm a West African, so there's so much history. And the thing is, history is not linear, in the sense of this happened and it went there. No, it's really just it kind of surrounds you. History is ever present, as somebody said, because the people who are kidnapped, enslaved, put on a boat, take that same culture with them, and they diversify that culture, merge it with another culture, and it becomes something else. So, I think Africa is a starting point. West Africa is a starting point. And then obviously the plan is to move to do documentaries on all these other places too. Will you do a documentary on your father's generation, or the generation that was socialized under the colonial administration? People have poor trauma suffered by Africans under colonialism. We've actually written a film. So as well as documentaries, I do feature films too. So we've actually written a film that kind of covers that generation. Rather than say the name, I'll just describe briefly what it's about. It's set in a fictional French country where gold is the primary resource. It's a French colonized country, and in this country, basically, it shows how one generation was cheated out of their land by the colonialists, because introducing this new tax system into people. So people who've had lands for hundreds and hundreds of years that they've been farming on, all of a sudden the French come in and say, no, you have to pay taxes. These people don't use a money economy. So now have to go and work in mines and so on for these taxes. They did this in South Africa. They did this all over. Some of them even went to go and fight in First and Second World War. So it just basically shows three generations, how one loses his land, another one goes to fight for the French, and then realizes that, hey, this is the only way to go. Later becomes a president and a dictator. And then the fourth generation, which is kind of the Sankara generation in the 80s, goes to get rid of him. So I'm making a film. Can you navigate Dakar well with decent French but no Wolof? I'm interested in visiting Senegal. Dakar is, to me, Dakar is probably my favorite city that I've visited in the world, simply because the culture in that city is, everybody's been there. So remember Dakar's position. It's facing the Canary Islands. Canary Islands were largely colonized by Spain. So a lot of the early arrivals into that place were Portuguese, Spanish, conquistador, people that eventually became conquistadors in the Americas. So somehow that culture is still there. You look at the currents that flow from the Atlantic currents that flow from what would be the Iberian Peninsula, go into Dakar, and then from there they go into the Gulf of Mexico. So for some reason, a lot of the Spanish culture, I think even spiritually, so-called Spanish, there's a lot of Latin music. I was surprised because I was in Dakar end of 2018 was the last time I was there, and a lot of people spoke English that were kind of in the circles that I was in, but I think most people speak Wolof than they speak French. So you can navigate it. If you need connections, though, there are many people on Instagram, on Facebook that you can connect with, tour operators. I know one personally that I'll be happy to put you in touch with if you wanted. So yeah, definitely visit. Dakar to me is my favorite city, and it's one of the few places in West Africa that is visa free. So there's no visa required. You can literally go there with any passport that you have. Once you arrive at the airport, you just go through, they stamp your passport as long as you know where you're going to. So they just let you through. Whereas the other places you need yellow fever this, yellow fever that, visas, etc. The other thing I'll say about Dakar is it's very, very Europeanized. Um, they love it. It's the only place, Senegal is the only place that hasn't really had any war since independence. They love it because the French have a control, semi-control. President Macky Sall has imprisoned a lot of the like hardcore um, pro Africans in the country, and so because of that, he's managed to keep the French people happy. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It gets cold though. Thank you so much. You answered perfectly. Thank you very much. Ever been to the Ivory Coast? Not long. I only spent a day in the Ivory Coast when I was a child. So no. Give me a dog. That's dope. It's so big. Okay. What can we do to help West Africa owned by France have more independence from French rule in their media? Do you believe having these countries learn and speak English? I think anything that would allow the quote unquote oppressors to understand what we're saying is the wrong thing. I think more than anything, I think one thing that myself and Dr. Kambon in particular was very outspoken about was in Ghana, what's his name? President Akufo-Addo, when he came into power a few years ago, he said French will be the up to secondary school level will be compulsory as a second language because of our neighbors. Ghana is surrounded by French colonized countries to the east, west, north, south. Well, not south, it's the Atlantic. So he's like, French needs to be a language that's spoken. And really, what he doesn't realize is on the eastern part of the Ghana, eastern region, going towards the border with Ivory Coast, you have the Akan people who have similar language but have been cut off because of the Berlin Conference borders that were created. So if you make Akan a compulsory language in that particular area as opposed to French, then what you're doing is you're connecting people. If you do the same thing on the eastern region of Ghana, so west, if you do the same thing to the eastern part of Ghana, which borders Togo, what you have is people who are very, very similar in culture as well. You have the Ewe people, for example. You have also Hausa, Fulani people that are up north. If you make those languages more uniform, then you have a better chance at uniting the whole of Africa. One thing that's very important, Hausa, for example, which is spoken in northern Nigeria, spoken in northern Togo, northern Benin, and parts of Niger and those type of countries, was at one stage in history was the second largest language spoken in Africa. You had Kiswahili, which was number one. And you look at the Swahili coast, Tanzania, Kenya, all these languages, they are Swahili speakers. And a lot of times now, to do with their telecommunications industry and their banking, they do a lot of things in Swahili, Kiswahili. So a lot of the people there speak Kiswahili. You look in Rwanda, why Rwanda is a success story is, why it's also sad, is for the same reason why it's a success, is it's really the same people that were divided by, the Belgians, but they speak the same language. They effectively have a similar, basically the same culture, but they speak the same language. Paul Kagame ensured that, okay, they moved away from the French to English, but it's really a second language. Everybody's primary language there is Kiswahili. Kinyarwanda, excuse me. So I think in terms of language, if we're going to go forward with this thing as an African people, we need to go back to indigenous languages. So if you're anybody there, I suggest that you go to abibitumi.com, which is Dr. Badele Kambon's site. Get a profile there and learn an African language. Because that's what I think, if we can speak that language, then we're no longer meeting each other to discuss how we're going to succeed by speaking English or French and having everybody understand exactly what we're saying, making notes. We speak in our indigenous mother tongue or whatever language you want to call it. And then we find ourselves in a position where we're able to make moves that benefit our people. Okay, I would like at some point. So where am I from? So I said at the beginning, So where am I from? So me, I consider myself an African, 100%. I'm born in Kenya. My mother is Rwandese. She's born in Rwanda, but grew up in Uganda. So she's a Uganda. She has both passports. My father is an Igbo man from Eastern Nigeria. Would you at some point do more films on voodoo? As I think Benin is the only African country with African religion, also Yoruba religion. I mean, I disagree. I think you can find remnants of these cultures all over the place. I think the only thing with voodoo and the Yoruba in particular is they are, because of Yoruba in particular, is a large population, very, very impactful population. Again, try and understand that the religion, the word religion itself denotes some type of way of doing things, but it also implies a kind of dogma, like you have to believe this. Really, in Africa, what we practice is freedom of. We had an ancestral way of doing things, but we really practiced a freedom of thought. You came together. So when you talk about democracy that they have here, if everybody in the village votes on something and one person doesn't agree, the whole village will go and connect with that person and say, how do you feel? This doesn't excuse the fact that people did wrong, good things and bad things, but the idea is there was a code of ethics. It wasn't a 10 commandments, thou shalt not. You don't need to tell somebody that he shouldn't kill somebody. He knows that intrinsically in his mind. A child even knows that without you telling him about 10 commandments, him or her about 10 commandments. So the religion aspect, I don't like using that word when I talk about African culture. It was more of a spiritual system. And you can find this right across, maybe I'll put a list of different cultures that are still practiced along the place. But the problem now is when it's described in Africa, they just give it a blanket term and call it animism. This idea that we believed in animals or we worshipped idols, they call it animism. But if you really dig deep, you'll find that these cultures are still there. Dogon have a culture. I didn't see much of it, but they still have some remnants of the culture there. But yeah, regarding voodoo in Benin, yes, I would love to. At the moment, we're largely self-funded. We rely heavily on donations. So it's very difficult to plan what we're going to do next. But I hope we were able to. Do you have plans to make docs programs to get children interested in our history? Yes, absolutely. But you see, with me, I have a certain interest. I have children, and I feel that my children needed to have this information accessible to them. So I started making these documentaries. But I think many other people exist in this world that have a similar interest to me, but have a different avenue that they want to go down. And I encourage you, if you're there, if you're in the chat room, you definitely should be the ones making these things. I'm only one individual. But thank you for the question, Natural Glow. Will you do a documentary on the history and the people of the Burkina Faso? I would love to. As a matter of fact, in the south of Burkina Faso, so the area which borders Mali, again, you have the Mossi people, the Mossi. Thomas Sankara, who is the late, great Pan-African leader from Burkina Faso, passed away in a coup in 1987, is a Mossi. In fact, if you look at the last documentary I put out, I think he's one of the last photos that I used. Thomas Sankara's, in that part of the world, you have these pyramids, I guess, earth-made pyramids. They use, I guess everything's made of earth, but these pyramid structures go back centuries. And one thing I wanted to do is go and maybe do a documentary on that particular area and find out a little bit more about it. So, okay, Hausa is spoken in parts of northern Ghana as well. Absolutely. In fact, when I was in Accra a year and a half ago, when you go to the artisan market in Legon, it's mainly Hausa people. Again, Hausa is something which I'm covering in my next documentary, particularly the seven great Hausa cities of the medieval world. Great answer. What's the website again for our languages? Abibitumi, abibitumi.com. So ABIBITUMI.com. I have a profile there as well. That's the only personal social media account I have. So if you create one, add me or let me be your friend. Being the only African country where voodoo as a state religion. Benin, voodoo is not really a state religion. I think the only two places where voodoo is kind of seen as any kind of like state sanctioned religion are Benin and Republic du Benin and Haiti. I think those are the only two places where it's actually, because I guess they understand the true element of it, and they're similar people. From what have you experienced? Do modern day monarchs, African kingship dynastic legacy have any influence in modern culture, politics in their country of origin? Absolutely not. You see, again, I'm giving too much information away, but in the new documentary I'm doing on even the Emirates of Kano, the emirs or the sarakis, which are traditional kings, even there where there was more, they had a little bit more say because of the society, the kind of feudal society they had in those parts. They themselves have been, they've seen very simply how the so-called democratic way can usurp their power, but they don't really have any power whatsoever. In fact, if you want to see a royal in many parts of West Africa, I'm talking more of the coastal places, it's actually not as complicated as you think. A lot of the times these people are, people go there, school history students from Western international schools in that part would go and visit them. That Porto Novo, the king of Porto Novo, we made an appointment with him the day before to, it's very kind of last minute. We had to chase him down, but he had a kind of like a job actually. I think he has a job, and he's more of a cultural figurehead. But the day that we went to interview him, we were there for almost 6 or 7 hours because he had organized for French school, French students to come there and be interviewed, to ask him random questions. So some of these kids were asking him like, "How many wives do you have?" Stuff like very embarrassing things. This is a man who's, well, the legacy of his position goes back centuries. But it is what it is. I hope that answers your question, by the way. Have you ever had issues with your ECOWAS passport in other ECOWAS countries? I've had loads of issues, but I think it's not to do with ECOWAS per se. It's more to do with being a Nigerian. There's a stigma, unfortunately, attached with being Nigerian. When I flew to Benin Republic, normally I would drive to Nigeria and then fly to Nigeria and drive over. When I flew to Benin Republic, I showed them my ECOWAS passport. I was held for 45 minutes at the airport with a Canadian girl, a white Canadian girl who had no visa whatsoever. And they were basically asking me questions like, where did I get this from? Blah, blah, blah. How come I didn't get a stamp from where I was coming from? Blah, blah. I'm like, they don't give stamps when you're leaving. They just record it on it. So, things like that happen. Please hit the like button, by the way. The other time when I went to Mali, I was very fortunate because I had organized with the Ministry of Ministry of Cinematography Association and the Ministry of Media or something like that. So I had letters that I printed out, luckily. But when I got to the airport, everybody, and the Malian passport, I think is green as well, just like the Nigerian. I just showed it. Everybody's just showing walking past. I show mine. They quickly stopped me. And this is nighttime. They pulled me aside, made me show everything. Made me explain to them everything. And there was also times when I was at the border with Benin and Nigeria, but the Nigeria border, Seme border, is something else. It's something else. If you're ever going to go down that border, it's very important that you go with, if you're from outside of West Africa, that you go with somebody who's familiar, who knows their ways around it. Sagi, thank you very much. Appreciate that. It'll be great for our kids. Yep, I agree. You just mentioned it. Could you see yourself living in what African countries could you see yourself? I mean, for me, it's without question something that will happen. In the next couple of years, at least. I don't know if I should say where, but West Africa for me is home, and I think with the growing issues in the Western world, and then on top of that, when you look at this pandemic and all the different aspects of it, and all the subsequent things we'll have to go through, vaccines, extra checks, etc. You have to look at it and say that the writing's on the wall for us as Black people in the Western world. There's nothing we're doing here anymore. There's absolutely nothing that we're needed for. You could see how these people are mutilating themselves. So the most important thing for us now is to bounce, unfortunately. So yeah, West Africa for me, without question, will be happening in the next couple of years, and I'm hoping it happens even sooner than that. But for me, my favorite ones would be, just as an idea, I love Dakar. Despite all the issues, I love Dakar. Accra, even Cape Coast in West Africa, in Ghana, sorry. Lomé and Cotonou are still some of my favorite places, but they're also French colonized. I'm not really a Lagos person. Lagos is very loud and bubbly. It's not my character. So Lagos is probably like a weekend. And the beautiful thing is you can fly from Lagos to Accra. It's a 40-minute flight. You know, you can get a ticket on the day. It's like $70, $75 if you get a good flight. So you can go there and club if you want and spend the weekend. So it's not, and you can drive. 10 hours on the West African coastline, beautiful drive, lovely food, fresh fish, grilled, and oh my God, you guys are making me reminisce now. I was in Sierra Leone, and there are a lot of Hausa there. They're all over West Africa. It's not different, yeah. Yeah, Sierra Leone, if you know anything about Sierra Leone and Liberia, those were places that were really acquired. Sierra Leone was acquired. They acquired a piece of land from I think the Mende people of that region of Sierra Leone. And basically like what they did in the United States, they acquired a piece of land and then brought formerly enslaved Africans with, white women and, a few other people to manage the thing. And then they encouraged these African people to go and usurp the leadership in these places. And then eventually they came and recolonized the place. Sierra Leone and Liberia, that happened with the Americans. So the United States government, in fact, that's why Monrovia is named Monrovia, because it's named after President Monroe at the time. So the people that went there were not necessarily Pan-Africans, they didn't have the best interest of Africans at heart. So, what you had is a mass migration of a lot of Sierra Leoneans that you find in Nigeria now. A lot of people migrated over the last couple hundred years. Oh, thank you, Natural Glow. I appreciate the comment. Do you have a Patreon, Super Chat? I don't have a Patreon or Super Chat, but if you would like to support the Cash App, we have a Cash App and we have a PayPal. Please feel free to contribute. I don't know if we could Super Chat. I don't know if it's enabled. If you want to Super Chat me, I'm going to try and be doing these every once a week or every couple of weeks. So, but please support the movement. We need it. So PayPal, Onuora Abuah. Cash App is # Onuora, Onuora Abuah. I'll put it in the thingy, Bob. I'll read some more of your comments. So. And also, just regarding the documentary that we're going to do with Dr. Kambon, this is something which he and I have spoken about loads and loads of times. And just before this COVID-19 outbreak, we really tried to make it happen. So we'll see by the end of the year. Can't wait for the documentary on Kano. I ran out of great documentaries on our continent lately. I need to get my Nigerian passport and bounce somewhere in West Africa. Listen, get your Nigerian passport, or I think there are a lot of people that want to wait for the kind of ceremonial. A lot of our brothers and sisters in the States who want to wait for the ceremonial nationality thing, which is fine if you want to do it. But Ghana seems to be the one that is taking it to another level since 2016. Dr. Kambon, by the way, was very keen pioneering that whole movement. He was one of the first generation that got citizenship. A whole bunch of them got it in 2019 as well, which he oversaw. But the issues with getting it formalized like that mean that the bureaucracy takes a while. Whereas our beloved Nigeria, if anyone knows a Nigerian, getting a Nigerian passport is a lot less complicated than you think. So, let us know if you need it. No, I won't even put myself out there. Abbas, thank you very much. Abbas, yes, telling people to donate. I appreciate it. Thank you. Having dreadlocks in your head, you get treated different. Sarah, that's an amazing question. Do I get treated differently, face discrimination in any countries you have been or lived? So my locks, I was traveling in Nigeria just in March. I traveled from the center of the country to the south coast to a place called Ondo, right on the coastline. And if you know anything about traveling in certain parts of West Africa, Nigeria in particular, is there's roadblocks, probably every mile, sometimes every few hundred feet. There's a roadblock, either the police, the army, you have another special unit of the police, you have customs sometimes. And I have a nose ring as well as, locks, as you've seen from my dog. So my locks are a lot longer than they were before. I was I'll be very honest with you, I was very nervous because, so I put a hat, a woolly hat, beanie, whatever you call it, as I was traveling. I was sat in the front seat, I had my crew in the back. Two of my crew members had locks too, but they live locally and they knew to wear hats. So I was fearful about that experience, but what people are like in West Africa is they immediately think, when you look different sometimes, certain people, I'm talking of the police and my experiences on the road, is they just thought I was a celebrity. So we would get waved through. People were like, oh my God, I watched your film. They thought I was a Nollywood actor or something like that. So they waved me through. But in other respects, I mean, more with quote unquote educated or people in authority at, say, airports, not in Nigeria, but in other places, I found that these things have been treated a little bit differently. But I will say this as well, the lock culture is in Senegal, for example, southern Mali, I think Mauritania, Gambia, locks are a cultural thing. You see, these locks didn't just start. You go back to ancient Kemet, locks were a sign of wisdom. So this is not just something that came up in Jamaica. The lock culture, which I think in Senegal, the Wolof people call it the Drek or something like that. Correct me if there's any Wolof speakers in the chat room. So that's a cultural thing for them too. So in certain places, I get by. When I was driving in Mali, so we drove from Bamako all the way to Timbuktu, which is 12 hours in the Sahara, basically Sahara Desert. Every time we get to a roadblock, they would look at me because that part of the world is very Islamic. So they would look at me with the locks and think, oh my God, are you from Senegal? And I would get stopped every single time. Plus I had a Nigerian passport, which didn't help. Okay, let's keep moving. I need to get my Nigerian passport. Visit Abidjan for sure. It's under French influence. They call it Petit Paris, oui. Abbas, yes. Ivory Coast, Abidjan, they call Petit Paris. And it's very, 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 very much French playground. Is there any railway system or the main form of travel between countries is through bus services? You could rent, I would always suggest, if you know somebody there, rent a private taxi. That's probably better. You get better rates there. Railway systems that exist. So Nigeria, for example, between Abuja and Kaduna in the north, there's a railway system, brand new light railway, but it's a distance so that's not too long anyway. There is a railway system, but it functions in a way that to go from A to B, close proximity takes you a day. So I wouldn't trust that. Benin has a railway system from Cotonou, I think, to, I don't know if it's working. Actually, don't quote me, I don't think it's working anymore. But most places you would go to by car or by some type of coach or local vehicle. I'm Yoruba, born and lived in the UK. I grew up in foster care and don't have family like that. So again, my mom's death or birth certificate will be a challenge. so this is Maribeja Intel. Well, if that's the situation, yes. And he also made a comment about the Mau Mau. Even as far away as Kenya, you look at Dedan Kimathi, who was the late great freedom fighter for the Kenyan people. He was locked. You know, in fact, if you go online and you see some of the YouTube videos when he was being interviewed by the British, they're like, why does he do his hair like that? This is prior to Bob Marley. So, you know, obviously the white people think anytime you don't follow the rules, then you're something wrong with you. So love what you're doing. Thank you very much, Solman. Please support, guys. I've put the details in the chat. Are you opposed to working with non-blacks to produce your documentaries? I mean, some of my sound mixer on my first documentary was a Greek man. And I've worked with non-blacks in different capacities. The issue is not necessarily who is working with me to produce this. What is the content that we're producing? I'm against them if they are approaching me to do something from their agenda. And I was approached by a BBC in 2017 about getting involved with them in some capacity about when they heard that I did a documentary about voodoo in Togo. But their agenda was un-African, you know, and I won't even bother you with the details. So I would say no to working with them if they're in control of what I'm putting out. So Sarah, yes, thank you. I have locks as well. I would like to find a country to visit where locks are treated as acceptable. Senegal, Gambia, definitely. They love the lock culture. Even in Lagos, if you're in coastal cities, you're kind of looked at. I went to Lagos actually, but I don't know. My people, if you're in Lagos, you tell me. But Senegal, Gambia, I know Banjul, and in fact, the Bayefal people, the Bayefal in kind of the further out in Senegal, they have a big festival, I think in March as well, every year. And they're an Islamic culture, but they're a lock culture. So those are places you can go to. Chinese built a railway system in northern Nigeria for their future needs. Absolutely. Yes, so I think that's everything, guys. If there are any more questions, let me know quickly so that we round up. Any more questions? What do you think about the recent BBC series, History of Africa with Zainab Badawi? I haven't seen it. I haven't actually seen it. I've been meaning to watch it. But again, I'll let you guys tell me. I don't, especially if it's kind of similar to what I'm doing, I tend to not watch it until I've completely done what I've done. So we'll see. I'll watch it soon. Police harass people because of locks in Lagos. Thank you, Chukwemeka. Dalo, as we say. He says it there. Your work is Netflix worthy, bro. Too many uneducated brothers and sisters out there that could benefit from what you're doing. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It would be great to be on a much bigger platform. But some of my work is on Kwali TV, which is run by a sister, Deshauna Price, in the States, all black organization. I think a lot of the Hidden Colors docs are there too. So check out some of my work on there too. Will you have a set day for your live broadcast? I'll try and do it. Can I just get a 1 from people if you would like to see live broadcasts once a week? If I get 6 or 7, then I'll know that you're interested. I keep getting YouTube recommends for that. The recent BBC series, yeah. So yeah, what's his name? What's her name? Zainab Badawi. She did Hard Talk, which is a big British program where they criticize a lot of leaders from Africa. So I don't really, to be honest with you, she doesn't inspire confidence in me when I see a documentary about Africa. Okay, so I guess people want me to do the lives a little bit more. Okay, I'll be happy to. Maybe we'll do it next, I suppose this time next week. So once a week, I guess, right? So thumbs up for once a week or once every, or more than once a week. So thumbs up for once a week, 2 thumbs up for more than once a week. Does that make sense? So thumbs up for once a week, 2 thumbs up if you want it more than once a week. So twice a week, for example. If you want me to do another one this week, then I can let you know. I can add super chat. To be honest with you, I'll be very honest with you with this YouTube thing. YouTube is a massive platform, but most of my stuff I tend to put on abibitumi.com, which is an African-run social media platform, and then abibitumitv.com. You know, unfortunately, we have certain limitations with what we're doing. In fact, I'm responsible for bringing a lot of African content to abibitumitv.com. So please go to abibitumitv.com. We put a lot of African films there. For us, the main thing is trying to get away from this westernized, controlled environment. If they're aware of all the finances that we're getting, then we're obviously in a position where they're still aware of what we're doing. I'm not really a fan of all these Cash Apps or PayPal, but it's the only thing I have access to. So if you do want to support Cash App or PayPal, that would be great. Okay. Okay, so I think that's it from everybody. If there are no more questions, I appreciate everybody. If we need a black YouTube for sure, but if you go to abibitumitv.com, a lot of the stuff in fact, everything that you see of mine on YouTube, I think, is on there as well. But we don't have the viewership, so I'm an admin on the channel too. It's not mine, but I'm an admin because I want to try and bring people to that platform. Yeah, I'll put a link. Thank you very much. And any of you who have profiles on Abibitumi, please post it in the chats as well, abibitumitv.com. So go there, and then it's run by Dr. Obadile Kambon, and he's somebody who I always try and get people to look up on. So Obadile's story, he came from United States. His father was Kamal Kambon, which is if you look a lot of those videos from the 90s and the 80s where the John Henry Clarks and people like that, those scholars, you would say, his father was one of them. And Dr. Kambon, Obadile, his son, moved to Ghana because he learned various languages, including Tree, Yoruba, Kiswahili, and so on, and was going through it in the United States, going through all the usual BS that you guys go through, and eventually moved to Ghana. So he's been running the channel there. He's a research fellow at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. So check it out. Okay, Salah, I watched Black Girl. Yes. My recommendations as well, I'll give you a few recommendations for films. You have to watch the films of Ousmane Sembène. If you want to understand the culture of the Senegalese people and generally West Africans, watch his film. So Black Girl, it's called, I think in the real title is Le Noir de N-O-I-R de. So that's a good film to watch if you want to understand that whole colonial period. So he's got a lot of films on YouTube, which you need to check out. Le Noir de. So Ousmane Sembène, he's the pioneer of filmmaking in Senegal. He's probably the only filmmaker. Senegal's got a rich filmmaking culture, by the way, but he's probably the only filmmaker who had a stable career of making films. He won awards all over the place, and Khala is another great film about impotence. But he's made some great films, so check him out. But I'm gonna sign out, I think. If there's anything else, anybody want to say anything? Any questions? Okay. So please make sure you like this video. Please make sure you share it. It's been a pleasure doing this. I hope to be back on with you guys in the next couple of days, hopefully. Please follow the Instagram, AEA Films. I guess that's the best place, but make sure you subscribe to this as well if you haven't already, so that you're aware of when we're doing new videos. I apologize for the background. It was quarantine. We didn't clean. Apologies. I'll make sure to clean it next time. Thank you very much. Peace. Take care. Bless you.